Hey TDA, and if you like kicking the outsiders off your planet with the Fremen, this guide is for you. This is the second updated guide in this series. Recently I covered the House Carino, which is all about massively optimizing a very small territory. The Fremen, however, are pretty much the opposite, spreading around all the map, taking all the villages they can get. The Fremen are, I think, one of the easiest factions to learn, but also not necessarily easy to master. They can harvest spice outside of their own territory, ally with sieges all over the map, and are somewhat friendly with worms, at least to the extent where they serve as transport. However, you also only get 4 buildings per village, which means that you are going to need all that territory in order to get your economy going. For the Councilors, I really like Mother Romalo as a first pick. The Shaiolu Tempo gives you a flat production boost to your zone and all the neighboring ones, and that is just extremely strong. The impact on neighboring villages is just icing on the cake. It's not a massive effect, but there's also not really a downside, and the rebellions can be really impactful if they catch your opponent off guard. My favorite second pick is usually good old Ben. His first ability won't be relevant until late in the game, but the second ability is always relevant and actually gets stronger as you expand across the map. That said, Shani is a pretty decent alternative. The first ability is a little bit random since your ability to influence when and where it happens is very limited, but the result is a nightmare for your opponents when it does. However, the intel ability is also very strong in the early and mid game and can stay relevant for a very long time if you keep liberating villages. In short, if you tend to go for a hegemony or assassination win up front, this is a solid second pick. Othame is a little bit lacking though. 10% speed is really nice, but on its own it just can't compete with the other Councilors. The second ability is only relevant if you send out units solo a lot, or at least far enough apart, and that just generally is a very risky strategy. Taking that risk just to make this Councilor work is just not worth it. Okay, so at the start of the game, as always, send out your Ornithopter to explore the villages in the Spy Zone, build 1 warrior and 1 skirmisher and send out those to capture the Spy Zone as soon as they are ready. This duo does splash damage, reduces armor and gives your enemies 2 debuffs, so they will shred through the initial villages like Bonnie and Clyde. You'll also want a second Ornithopter to speed up your exploration. We're picking the Spy Zone as the first village mainly because I assume you picked Ben as your second Councilor, and that immediately gives you the +1 authority, almost from the start. And since you will be starting to attack the first village as soon as you explore it, there is little reason to assume a random different pick will be any better than that specific village. Once you have that village, you build a harvesting team and send it over as soon as possible, while you're also building a plascrete factory, recruitment office and a research hub in your village to get your basic economy going. In terms of early research, composite materials followed by spice market boosts your early expansion while also helping you to figure out where those other spice fields are, as you will want to send your harvesting team towards them. There's usually a field or 2 in the middle of nowhere where your team can sit undisturbed for a very long time, even though you don't necessarily control the zone. I also recommend going for local dialect studies third to help you expand efficiently. Your agents should obviously go into the Arrakis Authority production as always, after which it is just a matter of putting them in whatever area gives you the most income of the type that you need. Expanding as the Fremen feels like you can just pick whatever you want, due to the amount of zones that you're actually selecting, but you should still be strategic about the order in which you take zones. Zones with a high wind strength are ideal since you're going to need those wind traps to expand, and any specials that provide you with resource income boosts are a high priority as well. Zones with spice fields are amazing if you have Ben as your second Councilor, but not a high priority if you don't have him, since you can still exploit those zones even if they are just neutral. Just make sure your enemies don't take them instead. Also, don't forget to like this video if you're finding it useful, because that will help others find it too. So once you have all those zones, you're going to need to put them to good use. You will want to build temples and maintenance centers in central zones to ensure you have their buff up on your entire territory. And for the remaining buildings, you should try to optimize those based on the specials of the particular zone and the village traits, assuming that there's not a specific resource that you desperately need instead. Don't forget to build some research centers along the way, and 1 or 2 military bases close to your enemies are always useful, even if it is just to defend. Missile batteries are typically not really worth the few slots that you have available, and the same holds for the other statecraft buildings, unless you have no way to get that income in a different way. The HQ buildings for the Fremen are amazing if done right. I recommend getting a single building of each color in the single zone districts, 2 economy buildings in the duo slot, and then 2 red buildings plus the bazaar in the large district. This will actually give you all 3 military bonuses while also getting you the 2 strongest economy bonuses. Unlike what I did here, I recommend starting out with the research center in a single slot to further improve your science, and getting the administrative hall in a single slot afterwards. After that, it doesn't really matter which buildings you get in what order, as long as you stick to this layout. Mid-game technology is a little bit situational. Pretty much all the Fremen-specific technologies in the economy tree are very strong, but getting Sand Brotherhood and Outpost Logistics will also help you expand at a much higher rate. Meanwhile, in order to make sure you can actually properly defend all that territory, you're going to need at least support structures for the mobile turret unit, which is really strong, ideally along with call to arms to help defend them with the melee Fadikin units, which are also very strong. Basically, you'll want to alternate your attention, focusing on the economy tree until you feel comfortable about your spice income, then focusing on some of the expansion technology until you feel like your military might be falling behind, and then fix that by getting some of the military technologies. After which you will repeat that process. Because the Fremen are so all around, it's very easy to get too greedy in one area while neglecting something else, so this is actually one of the hardest things to get right, and there's no exact formula that I feel works in every single scenario. However, it does feel like taking about 2 technologies in a tree and then shifting to the next one is more or less accurate for most situations. In terms of actually winning the game, the most obvious route is through military might. Simply by expanding, you'll get a lot of hegemony without even trying, so that is a valid option. If you're expanding, you might actually accidentally kick down the sand castles of your enemies, and in my experience, you'll probably win through hegemony before you can actually take out all your enemies completely, just through the sheer amount of points you get from zones. So for both victory types, the approach is the same. One key element to winning with the Fremen is to not pick a fight with your enemies until you are ready, and to not pick a fight with more than 1 enemy at a time if you can help it. That's pretty good advice for everyone, but it especially holds for the Fremen. The easiest way to defeat a Fremen is to attack their huge territory from multiple sides and have them running all over the place to defend, as that will quickly turn into a disaster, since the mobility of the Fremen is very limited without airfields. And that of course also means that playing as the Fremen, you'll want to try and save your Thumpers for emergency only. Keeping the hidden Thumpers operation on standby will be a massive help with that, as it allows you to use your worms for free. If you can take control of a deep desert by completely surrounding it, that will also make your internal logistics a lot easier, on top of the massive boost you get from the Sand Brotherhood technology, since you'll be able to pass through it completely free. I didn't talk about the flying units yet, which is mainly because they are a little annoying to actually get the machine scraps for. The small flyer is nothing special, and the large ship is so expensive that you'll probably be winning the game by the time you get it. However, if you can get the large ship, it is pretty strong, especially when upgraded with 2 upgrades in the bottom right. That will make your army almost unstoppable. All in all, the Fremen have a very fun and active game plan that will have you moving your units across the map almost non-stop. Although it is a pretty straightforward faction, it does take some time to really master the nuances. I hope this guide has helped you on your way to Fremen domination of Arrakis, and don't forget to subscribe for more content. Keep the spice flowing, and I hope to catch you in the next one.